What's happening, guys? Happy Tuesday evening. Welcome back to another session of Johnny Gaz Live. I appreciate you coming along for the ride on another Tuesday. Welcome, Lions fans. Welcome all. I appreciate you guys. We are going to be talking a Lions loss to the Minnesota Vikings. I think we all know coming into this live where we're going to start. Trade deadline was today. Huge topic. We're going to get into that. I know we got a lot of Lions fans with a lot of opinions there as far as what happened today in the trade deadline for the Lions. We're going to dive into that. What does this loss mean for the Lions? What does it mean for the playoff picture, the bigger overall picture in the NFC for these Lions? Now sitting at 5-3 after the loss to the Vikings. We're going to dive into all of it, the good, the bad. We're going to talk about the offense, Johnny Morton, the offensive coordinator. We're going to get into a lot of topics today, guys, but mostly I want to hear from you. I want to get you involved in the chat. I have plenty of questions for you guys here today, as we always do here on Johnny Gaz Live. And it becomes such a great session because of you, because you guys get involved so early. I appreciate you. Mile Marker, I saw you get involved even before the live started, my man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Welcome back to Johnny Gaz Live. Big shout out to 313 Villain Squad on Facebook. Thank you for allowing us to post our lives, post our Detroit Lions content daily at 313 Lions Squad on Facebook. Make sure to check it out. Go check out Russell. He's got good Lions content and a lot of good fans supporting that group. So definitely go give it a look. If you are new to the channel, please hit subscribe, hit like on the live. It is the best way to help the channel out. We are now starting to grow thanks to you guys. We're soaring to almost 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. Really awesome now. We're in the meat and bones of the 2025-26 NFL season. Lions, although we're coming off a tough loss, we have a lot to talk about. Brings up great topics every Tuesday night, and I love having you guys involved. Again, thank you for coming along for the ride. Make sure to slap that like button if you haven't already. Say hello in the chat. We're going to get you guys involved early here. Let's bring the chat in right away, and we'll get off and running. But ultimately, we're going to start this live with the most recent game for the Lions. And we know we're coming off a 27-24 loss to the Minnesota Vikings, coming off the bye week. And Lions historically haven't played real excellent off their byes. I mean, the most recent one before this one, obviously, is the bye week heading into that divisional round with the Washington Commanders, and we know how that one went. Lions in week 1 this year, coming off of a preseason where they don't play all their starters, and that's been their MO. They don't play their starters in the preseason, but does that then lead to that week 1 loss in Green Bay? They have a week off leading into Minnesota, which most would indicate with 2 weeks to prepare for what many would have deemed a lesser opponent in the Minnesota Vikings heading into this week 9 matchup. But Minnesota was game. J.J. McCarthy, the young quarterback, was efficient when needed. The Lions offense stalled way too many times. The special teams gave up way too many big plays. And there's so much to dive into. Ultimately, the Lions lose that football game 27-24, dropping to 5-3 and creating a mess within the NFC North, which we will talk about here in just a moment. What's happened to the music? It's not looping anymore. Let's get that back going. We can't have that going. There we go. It's funny though, because the game started off so well. Lions open up with that drive. Big time to Sam Laporta. He was the only guy to really catch a pass in that drive. Hits a 40-yard, 4th down touchdown pass from Jared Goff to start the scoring in that game. Lions go up 7-0. Things seem to be rolling. You think at that point the Lions are just going to kind of roll over Minnesota, but they were game. Minnesota drives right back down the field, scores a touchdown with Justin Jefferson, and really from that point forward, the Lions offense just could not get it going. Just could not get it going. Stalling out, disjointed, sluggish, however you want to describe the offensive performance, inconsistent. I came out with a short recently arguing that the running game is broken. The current running scheme, the Lions offensive coordinator, and the running scheme for the Lions currently is broken. Let me know if you agree with that. But before we dive too far in, let me know on a scale of 1 to 10 in the chat, let me know, how concerned are you about the Lions now after this loss? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you are not concerned at all, you have nothing, you are Teflon, you brush it off your shoulder and you move on. 10 is DEFCON 10, panic mode, nothing is working, offensive coordinator should be fired, blah, 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 Lions should blow everything up. That would be 10. So let me know from a scale of 1 to 10 where you fall after this Lions loss. Millicent, how you doing? Hello. Thank you for getting involved early. Jill, what's up? What the heck did happen Sunday? We're going to talk about it. Johnny Herman, how you doing, buddy? Appreciate you guys getting involved early. Thank you so much. Mile Marker, how you doing? We got a 5 from Millicent, a 4 from Mile Marker, a 3 from Jill. Again, on a scale from 1 to 10, how concerned are you coming off this loss for the Lions? Let me know in the chat. Thank you guys for getting involved early. We'll get the chat on the screen for you. And we're going to be talking Lions all night long. We got a ton of good topics today. What up, broski? Dude, your Bears. What's happening with the Bears, man? Ben Johnson. Let me tell you, the more weeks go by, the more that Ben Johnson ship seems to get farther and farther away. But heck, man, everybody's in the thick of it now in the NFC North. But good to see you in the chat. Appreciate you, buddy. John Herman's at a 3. And we know, guys, this isn't panic mode. I am not in panic mode. I'm going to say it to you right now. There's no reason to panic. There's issues. There's long-term issues. And the Lions do have a lot of problems on the offensive line. Things are going to have to resolve. So it's not just a quick fix, but it's certainly not a panic mode thing, I think, for the Lions. I do believe these are things that can be turned around. We're going to talk about how they can do that in detail. Because it's funny, on a Monday and Tuesday following a loss like this for the Lions, the national perception gets blown up. Lions fans tend to go off the deep end in some cases, and some of it warranted. Some of the argument being warranted. And we're going to talk about one of the things that I think is definitely a warranted argument from Lions fans today as we get into the trade deadline discussion. But the national perception has shifted. Lions dropping in all the major power rankings this week. Not a surprise. They're riding high going into the bye week. Considered one of the best teams in the NFC. I made the argument they were the best team in the NFC, but it's hard to support that argument with a loss like they had on Sunday against the Vikings. Danny Klutz had about a 3. Danny, how you doing, buddy? What's up, Joe? All bad on Sunday. You are right, my friend. We're going to hit on all the bad because there was not a lot of good. After that first drive, not much. We're going to talk about it. Milson says, with Morton's play calling, I had to keep checking to see if I was at Ford Field or Friday night at a small town football game. Interesting. Yeah, the offensive coordinator, John Morton, a big topic of discussion. You're either leaning in, I think, the direction of it's John Morton's fault. I've heard a lot of that from fans. Others have said that this is more of a player issue, the offensive line and what's happening with the injuries up front. Could it be more of a Hank Fraley problem? Is it a Dan Campbell problem? So I've heard a little bit of everything today. Broski says, let's see what the injury report for the O-line looks like tomorrow. Both guards and both tackles were banged up. We're talking about the Bears or the Lions, because if we're talking Lions, for sure, they're hurting on the O-line real bad right now. We know Christian Mahogany's going to be out for an extended period of time. He's got the broken leg. He may not even come back this season. Matter of fact, I think it's going to be very wishful thinking that he returns for any sort of playoff run. So I would expect him to be out. With that being said, you're down a guard. Taylor Decker, the left tackle, has been suffering with injuries. The knee has been a problem. The shoulder's been a problem, and now the knee's a problem. He was rolled up on Sunday. Penei Sewell went out of the game for a short period of time. You never see that. It was an eye issue, and then some other things going on with the shoulder. It sounds like that is not something serious, so that is good news. But the truth is, Lions are hurt up front. With the retirement of Frank Ragnow, the 2 young guards, you're now losing one of those guys, so you're going to have to bring in a depth piece, most likely Coyote Owasika, which the Lions have faith in. He's played quality snaps for this Lions team. So there's certainly reason to believe they can fill in the spot, but ultimately they have problems up front, and now they're going to have to adjust with more depth. So it's going to become harder for Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach, and ultimately John Morton, the offensive coordinator, to scheme this up right to make this happen, not only to protect Jared Goff. They gave up 5 sacks to the Vikings on Sunday. 5 sacks to the Vikings on Sunday and only 65 total rushing yards. I mean, that's just not good enough. That's not good enough. I mean, that's an understatement. Bash, how you doing, buddy? Bash says, go Lions. Absolutely, brother. Go Lions. That's why we're here. John says, we can recover. We keep fighting. Even with all the mistakes and poor performances, we're still in the game. Listen, man, I'm with you. I'm with you. We're going to talk about a lot of bad, a lot of negative today, but none of this means that this is an unrecoverable. This doesn't mean the Lions can't win a Super Bowl. I truly believe they are still one of, if not the best team in the NFC. Talent-wise, I certainly believe they are when healthy. But there's just a lot of questions, especially offensively right now, that need to be answered. When I thought, and I think a lot of collective Lions fans and collectively Lions Nation thought these questions were answered, well, they are not now after this bye week and the loss to the Vikings. And to me, specifically, it's about the protection from the middle and then the running game. I think the running game has to be fixed. Some would argue it's not broken, but I will make the argument that compared to years past, it is not as effective, certainly, and it's in this situation with the way the Lions offense is running and the way the protection is, the running game has to be there, and it's just not enough. What do you think the turning point was in the game, in your opinion? Was it truly just the lack of offense overall? Was there a play, a series, a turnover, a penalty that turned this football game? I mean, the Lions certainly had every opportunity, and they're good enough to run away with any game offensively, but they just haven't been able to put their foot on the gas and keep it on the gas. And too many times they're stalling out, and I think it's because, in my opinion, they're not getting enough from their running game on first and second down. It's putting them in third and long situations they haven't been comfortable with in the past. In years past, they've done better on first and second downs, which has shortened their third downs and made it easier on the offense. And now you're not seeing that. And they're in a situation where third and long, like 3rd and 4 or longer, they are terrible right now. They're awful. I think they converted their first 3rd and 10 or longer in this game against the Vikings all season. Jody with a $10 dono. How you doing? Hey, I'm still learning some things here. Let's try this, Jody. Let's get you one of these. I'm still learning the sounds. This is a new system today. We're working from StreamYard today and not Restream or Restream, whatever you call it. So I'm kind of learning the ins and outs of this. I apologize. You see the chat looks a little bit different. So I'm kind of figuring that out, guys. I can play with this a little bit. We'll work some things. It's all kind of the same, but a little bit different. So as I figure this out and kind of mend it to what we're doing, we'll get back to normal. Yeah, that looks better. I like that. But Jody, thank you so much. $10 dono. She says, no offense, Gaz, but it is panic time. If not now, then when? Our entire interior O-line is hurt or out. They are supposed to protect Goff. What will it take for panic? A season-ending injury for Goff? Listen, you bring up some good points, Jody. You certainly do. Again, I appreciate the donation, and I appreciate you getting involved in the chat. And many would support your argument that it is panic time in Detroit. But what I will remind you of is we're still 5-3. This Lions team has proven that they can win in adverse conditions. They can go on the road. They can get victories. They don't typically lose back-to-back games. So I have all the faith in the world that this coaching staff will prepare this team for the Washington Commanders in Week 10. Does that mean that the long-term questions will be answered? No. Or that the panic is over? No. Even a win at Washington doesn't mean there still aren't concerns. That interior of the offensive line is the biggest concern. I agree with you, Jody. You hit the excellent point. If they don't solve that now with Mahogany out, then there could be bigger problems. So you're not wrong to panic. And again, I've heard that a lot today. I am not there yet. Broski says, Vikings started with a short field too often. Special teams coverage sucked. You're absolutely right. Broski, it's a huge point. I mean, the Lions put the Vikings in the most winnable situations possible all day long. Long kickoff return, a blocked field goal. They punted a billion times. They turned the ball over. David Montgomery, an uncharacteristic fumble. J.J. McCarthy had the perfect situation to get a victory there, and he was efficient enough to make it happen. So all the credit in the world to the Vikings, but they really were given short fields all day long. You're exactly correct. Sewell either got a stinger or a dislocated shoulder on top of his yet getting poked. I'm curious to see what the injury report says for him. He's a gamer, and I think with the other injuries, unless that shoulder truly doesn't allow him to physically play, I think he'll be in the lineup. You'll probably just see him rest and not practice would be my guess, but it's a concern. If he goes out, then you really have big concerns. Then, Jody, then it is 1,000% panic time if there's no Penei Sewell. But right now they're not there, and I haven't gotten an indication that he's going to miss time. So let's hope that stays true. Mile Marker says, the third sack for me, it became clear Goff was not going to be given enough time. I mean, he was just being pressured up front in his face all day. And the thing is, we know Jared Goff just doesn't respond to in-face pressure. He has no ability to work around that type of pressure. He's got decent feet at times, and he can absorb maybe a rusher from the outside and step up or step back, but he's just not agile enough for that kind of rush. Morton is not using Laporta and Williams on those third downs as he should, says Millicent. There's something to be said there, Millicent. I mean, the way the offensive coordinator is fitting the puzzle pieces into place isn't working exactly efficiently. We've had good games. The rushing attack was fine against the Ravens on the road. So again, it's not like they've been awful every single game all year. And I think people, unfortunately, lean on that in the positive a little too much. Like with my argument that the running game was broken, everybody came back at me and said, oh, the Lions are still averaging almost 100 yards a game, and they've only had under 100 yards only 2 games this year, and they're 9th in rushing. Well, yeah, if you average things out based on some of their best games, but when you really look at the totality of the season and really the rushing attack compared this year to last year, there is no comparison. The offensive line is not the same. With Frank Ragnow not there, it's just not the same. So that there is room for growth in the rushing attack. Lions will bounce back against Washington. What's up, Trim? How you doing? Bash says, I got to Goff too many times. Jody, thanks for your response, guys. I can appreciate your thoughts too. Jody, I appreciate you more than anything. Keep coming, and you're not wrong. No way. And I will never sit here and say that, because the truth is, again, there's too many questions now up front. So if you are in panic time, there's nothing wrong with that. Shout out Jody. That's right, broski. Appreciate you, man. Big time dono. Appreciate you. So we kind of mixed it in, and we talked about what went wrong. I mean, it's that pressure rate from Minnesota. They were able to get to Goff 5 times. I mean, that's a clear issue for the Lions, is that protection. Goff was uncomfortable all game long, it felt like, and the Lions really just never able to establish a rhythm offensively. I mean, they were really losing a lot of one-on-ones up front, and it was clear that the running backs picking up some of the blitzes weren't there. I talked about Jahmyr Gibbs getting maybe put in too many positions where he had to pick up an oncoming blitzer, and that's not really his game. He's able to do it, but that's not why you have Jahmyr Gibbs on the field. You need to get him the football. And too many times, I think it was 7 times he was asked to pick up a blitzer. And in most of those cases, it failed. And again, it's a little bit on Jahmyr Gibbs, but I think that's more on John Morton. And it could a little bit be on Jared Goff, because the other argument is, well, maybe that wasn't the play call, but Jared Goff fires out of it or cancels it or audibles to something else, which then put Jahmyr Gibbs in that position. Either way, the offense should be suited to where if Jahmyr Gibbs is your back, the main option is not to have him stay in and block. You know, I mean, I'm simplifying it. I know that, but that's the truth. And you saw it too many times. Jahmyr Gibbs put in a bad position there, and it led to sacks. It led to pressure. I mean, Dan Campbell admitted the pass protection plan was not good enough. He came out and said that specifically about Gibbs, and I agree with that. And I think that's a direct shot. I think that's a Not a direct shot, but that's a kind of a backward shot at his offensive coordinator. Jay Cruiser says, hey, Gaz, Lions are set, or should I say NFL is set? Well, I mean, if we're talking about the script writers, if that holds true, I've been told the script writers say it's Chiefs Lions in the Super Bowl. So I'm okay with that. We'll see what happens. Some weird stuff going around the NFL right now. It was a weird week. Truthfully, it was a weird week. Packers lost to the Carolina Panthers at home. I mean, it was a weird week. John asked, do you think it seemed like the Vikings knew what plays were running on too many plays? I don't know if that was the case, John. I think it's the Brian Flores defense being able to get to Jared Goff and figure out a way to hold the Lions rushing attack down. I mean, the Lions have had success against Minnesota in the past, and I think Brian Flores tried to do like more exotic things that the Lions were able to diagnose. And again, with their offensive line with Ragnow involved in last year's offensive line, it was a lot different than this year. So the Lions, I think, had a little bit more faith in picking up those exotic blitzes. In this case, in week 9 against Minnesota, they weren't able to do that. And Brian Flores just pinned his ears back and said, all right, go get them. And the Lions weren't able to stop it. Vegas is awful. I mean, again, I get it. I get it. I don't know, guys. I hate the Vegas discussion because it just takes away from everything else we kind of talk about a little bit, but I understand what you're saying. I really do. And it does play a part in this. I'm not immune to it. Jill, the O-line needs work. Absolutely. Jill says the Vikings could almost guess how to defend each play. Again, I think they just figured out what works best right now against the Lions offense. And that's direct pressure up the middle. They dropped their edges. Like they would literally blitz 2 linebackers with their defensive tackles, and then the edges would drop off into the middle, which would stop those crossing routes from Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And that was really after that first reception or first possession for the Lions. They kind of figured it out. Now it's up to the Lions now to adjust. They have to adjust because other teams are going to take that and run with it. Millicent says, I was worried both Gibbs and Goff were going to get injured. I feel like that's part of the routine now when we watch these games as Lions fans. There's so many injuries to this roster. It's almost like in every play and every contact, you're almost like waiting for, okay, who's the next player to go down? It's not a good place to be, really. Big shout out, Jody. I hate that betting is such a prominent presence in all sports. Wish we can put that cat back in the bag. You're right. I mean, we can't. I mean, it's the reality and it's what we're going to have to live with. And it whether you want to believe it or not, it does affect, I think, outcomes of games in some ways. But you know how they say sometimes you got to suspend disbelief. Let's say when you're watching a movie or a TV show or, I don't know, a kid's play. There's a lot of things. You got to kind of do that a little bit with the NFL, and just kind of enjoy the ride. Because right now, no matter how much bad we're talking about this week 9 loss to the Vikings or how much concern we have, and it's all valid right now, and we're all allowed to feel the way we feel, it's still in the moment of the best era of Lions football I've ever lived through. I mean, there might be people out there in chat older than me that have lived through the golden era of the 30s or the 50s when the Lions were winning championships. But in my lifetime, this is the best the Lions have ever been. So even this discussion is enjoyable. That's why I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate everyone for coming along on Johnny Gaz Lives. Jay Cruiser says, injuries didn't started after their defect. Not sure I got that one, buddy. Injuries didn't started after their defect. I just feel like the argument initially was the Lions just play at such a intense speed that it lends itself to injuries. I've also heard the Lions strength and conditioning coaches aren't good enough. I don't think that's ever a legitimate argument. I just think it's the reality of the NFL. Injuries are happening all over the place. And the Lions do play at 110% the whole game. And it's part of the deal. Win-loss, win-loss, that's not going anywhere. Yeah, let's see if the Lions, though, can recover from this one. I mean, it's going to be very important now that the Lions are able to recoup, go on the road in Week 10. They have a very winnable matchup against the Washington Commanders. We know the unfortunate injury to Jaden Daniels, that was not a good-looking injury. His non-throwing arm, so I guess that's a good sign, but it doesn't affect like when he's coming back. So it puts the Lions in a position where they again will be the more talented team. They should come in favorited, and they should be able to get this victory on the road. They really need it now because of how the NFC North is shaping up. Getting back to the running game disappearing, the Lions averaged 3.2 yards per carry. It seemed like Gibbs and Montgomery were hit behind the line repeatedly. And again, that running game to me was always the identity of this Lions team. And it feels like that's what makes it a little bit worse. It's like the Lions had lost a little bit of their identity, and it starts there. It starts up front. The injuries, the offensive line, the rushing attack. Jill says, not panic. We still have 9 games to play. It's called phony football in the GOV. Jay Cruzen, that's the world we live in, right? Shrimp says, well, I'm tired to tell you, but I guess you didn't know they've been messing with field goals and his magnets in the polls. Yeah, I've heard that. Matter of fact, if you look at when the ball goes to a fan in the stands, very quickly they go and switch that ball out. Tony Romo said it's because there's sensors in the ball, but that's kind of the other argument, right, Trim, is that there's other outside forces coming into play there. Johnny, you said the magic word adjustment, says Millicent. Morton made no adjustments throughout the game. It was so frustrating to see the same play called over and over again. The screens just stop. Yeah, I think there's almost an ignorance for them to want to try and either force the football, at first early on in the season was up the middle. Then I felt like against the Vikings, they were trying to get to the edge, but they couldn't set an edge. And they did not adjust. I agree with you. That seems to be maybe the biggest argument against Morton right now is where is the in-game adjustments, the halftime adjustments. I hate to keep going back to the Gibbs and protection thing, but it's like, how do you continue to allow that to happen? And again, the question is it more than John Morton? It probably is. It's probably a combination of the offensive staff, Jared Goff, what they're able to audible to, and putting the players in the right positions. And I just don't think it's happening 100%. The special teams. I mean, again, we hit on that a little bit, but the special teams were just awful against Minnesota. And in games where you don't have your best offensive day, and that's going to happen. You can't expect your offense to score 35, 37 points every single week. So in games where you don't score that many points and you have to rely on defense and special teams, that has to be true. And special teams was awful. Outside of Jack Fox punting the football, which is always good, Jake Bates, again, has been shaky this year. They had the blocked field goal. They gave up the large return. It just put the Lions in a tough position when they were already struggling offensively. And all 3 phases felt like it hurt the Lions at some point in that game. And when that happens, it's not winning football. And that's how you lose 27-24 to the Vikings. And I hate to say the team didn't look prepared, but it just was surprising, again, coming off the bye week, that they just looked a step behind, a step slower. They never used to miss so many field goals and extra points. That might be a good point. Return of the doink. They love the doink, don't they? So 2 questions I have for you guys in chat before we, leave the negative side of this game. Do you think the offensive line struggles are due to the injuries? Is it due to the attrition from last year? Or is this a scheme issue? Is this a coaching issue? So is it injury related, the lack of players, or is this scheme related? Let me know. The offensive line struggling because of the injuries or because of scheme and coaching? And it's funny because I think that leads to an even bigger question. And a lot of the conversation that I've had with Lions fans over the past 24 hours, 48 hours now since the loss, is the loss to blame more on the coaches or the players? I mean, a lot of people will back Dan Campbell to a fault, and he's given us nothing but positive as far as Lions football and the organization in general. But there's things to question, especially on the offensive side. We hit on John Morton all session long, so we won't continue that. But is this loss more on the players, or is this a coaching issue? Jody says both, but Johnny Moe the most. Yeah. Too much Halloween candy? Jill, we hit on that. I hope everybody got their mega load of Halloween candy. Last week, we talked about the best, worst Halloween candy. I thought that was a fantastic discussion. That was a lot of fun. And I'm going to try to bring more topics like that to the end of these lives. I'll even try to prep a little bit more so that in the notifications that go out and thumbnail, you'll kind of get a vibe for what we're going to get into that day. Because I think those kind of topics are a lot of fun to get into. Obviously, last week it led itself to the Halloween holiday. So I'll have more of that stuff for us down the road. That's a lot of fun. So we talked about the negative side. We know kind of the when we're saying winners or losers, kind of what the losers were of that game. The offensive line, the rushing attack, special teams. I thought the Lions were just sloppy. Too many penalties, turning the ball over, giving up sacks. It just wasn't what you expected coming off of the bye week. So those are the negatives. On the winning side, on the positive side, I think Sam Laporta continues to shine, not only because of the first drive and what he did on fourth down there, but I think he's been consistent for Jared Goff and a part of this offense all year long. In what has been kind of up and down for this offense all year, Sam Laporta has been a bright spot. Jamison Williams, I thought, showed flashes, and as much as there was talk with John Morton in apologizing to Jamison Williams for not working him into this scheme enough, I thought he showed flashes in the game. Obviously, the big play at the end is a shining example of that. It was a great play. They needed to have points, and ultimately, if things shook out a little bit differently, it could have been the catalyst to get them back into that game. And those are the kind of plays you want to see from Jamison Williams, but you hope to see that in games where they're winning or, in a more winning football situation. Michelle says she's got no conspiracy theories to share. We do have 2 major coaching changes, and it caught up to us last week. We need to calm down. Forget about a Parsons-type trade and stay positive. Jeez. Millicent says, I put most of it on John Morton. Later, Trimbo. Jody, another $5 dono. Jody, you're on fire tonight. I appreciate you so much. Thank you. She says, Goff called kill on Sunday more than I've ever heard him before. That's a clue he's not loving Johnny Moe. That's a good point. That's a good point. I would say you're probably right. He probably did kill. I did hear that with you probably more times than I ever have. In the preseason, there was a huge topic. We talked about the offense, right? Jared Goff sort of coming into control of this offense in total because of the offensive coordinator changeover. I think he had a lot of autonomy last year to change plays, but I think even more so this year. So is it that? Is it because Jared Goff has the freedom to do that? Or is it what you said, Jody, and it could absolutely be true? Is it because him and the offense don't have faith in the original play call, and he's more comfortable checking to something that he sees and something that he's more comfortable with? I mean, there's something to be said for that. Again, I appreciate you so much for the multiple donos today. Thank you, Jody. Give you another one of these. Danny Klutz says some guy's coming back soon. Yeah, I mean, and we're going to get into trade deadline. Don't worry. I'm sort of saving that towards the back end here because I think that's going to blow some people up. But I think that's the plan. They are expecting to get healthy, to get guys back periodically as we move through the season, and that'll sort of be their additions, and that's what they're going to rely on. They've always sort of been in-house, and they're going to keep it that way yet again. Trim says, I'm still munching on the kids' candy bag. So are we, Trim. We're still working through the candy bowl upstairs. Like I talked about last week, my kid just doesn't eat a ton of candy, so he had his little grab bag or whatever the night of, but after that, it's been me and his mom just kind of picking and prodding. Twix, thank you. Milky Way, thank you. Cowtail, yes, please. By the way, Cowtails, I have a new respect for Cowtails. I didn't know about, I knew they existed, but I never really went at one before. But this year, I actually had, I think, my first Cowtail, and I thought it was excellent. Soft caramel wrapped around like a vanilla, I don't even know what it is, like cream. It's delicious. Jody's been great all day. We appreciate Jody, don't we? Melissa says, JMO and TA were bright spots too. Yeah, absolutely. Having TA back was good. I think, he had his ups and downs, but ultimately you want to have him in the game. He needs to stay healthy. I think that's really maybe a bigger concern for TA is he comes back and he goes out again, and he's always got something. So it's just battling injuries. Jody says, maybe a little bit of both, but I think it's more him not loving Mo's calls. You could be right. You could absolutely be right, Jody. I hope they iron that out. It has to be ironed out if this thing's going to work. Trim says the Lions are going to pummel Washington. I hope you're right. Oh, thanks, Trim. All right, good. We love having you around, buddy. Sorry, thought they meant me. No problem, though. They pushed the fact, says Michelle, that it was a collaboration with Goff and Morton. That's ideally what it should be. But I do agree with Jody. I felt like we did hear kill a lot, meaning that Jared Goff is changing the play at the line of scrimmage or audibling out of whatever the original play call was. What's up, Robert? How you doing? He goes, my man, I'm always late to the stream. No worries. We played a really bad game and almost won, which why I'm extremely confident in this team. You bring up a good point. They played their worst game of the season. You could maybe argue that Green Bay in week 1 was worse, but I don't know. I think with the way that everything was built up coming out of the bye, this was maybe the biggest letdown of the year so far. And there is some solace to be taken in that. In their worst game offensively, special teams, they still almost were able to pull that out. And again, that's why I'm not in panic mode, because I think if they're able to get a little bit healthy, they need to shore up the offensive line health as much as they can. You're not going to just put Mahogany back in with a broken leg. He's gone. But truthfully, with Coyote Awasika and hopefully Decker can stay healthy, I think they can shore up the front. They'll have to switch some things around so that the interior pressure, they get some help there. But I think they should be able to do that. No, broski. We were talking. We'll do a soul food episode down the road, my man. I don't know. I gotta school myself better in soul food. No, like Cowtails, like the candy. We were talking about Halloween candy last week, what our favorite candy was, worst candies. And I just never had a Cowtail before. Well, this year I did, and I thought it was excellent. Everybody's talking about my tight pants. I got my tight pants on. What's your take on the Goff Morton screaming match coming out of halftime? Well, broski, you could look at it one of two ways. The pessimist would say that is a sign of a break between your quarterback and offensive coordinator, like a disconnect, a miscommunication. I think the positive people would look at that and say very clearly the offense is having trouble establishing a rhythm. Jared Goff knows that. And you got two real competitors wanting to figure this out so badly in the moment. And so for that to come together, it is it's tough. So I'm going to look at that as a positive. I hope they can learn from it, and that kind of passion will lend itself to better play calling, a better offensive rhythm in general. You don't love to hear that. It's like it's one of those things that if this continues to snowball, if they can't dig themselves out of it, or if things get worse, they'll lean back onto that little moment and go, there's where the cracks were coming in, Cowtails are pretty good, aren't they, bud? Maybe a new center, Danny says. Yeah, here's the deal. We've been so spoiled with Frank Ragnow in the 7 years prior, or whatever it was, that the line was so good. They were so good. And Ragnow was the anchor of that. So to expect that Graham Glasgow was ever going to step in and fill those shoes. It just wasn't going to be possible. And on top of the fact that Ragnow at least had experienced guards next to him most seasons, and Glasgow doesn't have that. So I don't disagree with you that a better center would help them. And I would take Frank Ragnow back in a heartbeat, but it's just not in the cards. And right now, Graham Glasgow is the best they got. Next year, I think they do have to figure that out. Yeah, we'll do a soul food episode down the way, broski. We'll get you involved in that one. That's funny. Jody says, I heard that was baloney, and she's referring to the shouting match for Goff and Morton that was reported. I think there's a disconnect there, but how do you have a screaming match with the dude who's up in the box even half the... I wasn't going to call anybody out because I get what you were going at, broski, and I get you too, Jody. I actually heard it was after the game as they were leaving the tunnel. But I agree with you. I don't know how Morton gets from the box into the tunnel, but they could work that out. I mean, the timing of it is in question. And you're right. That could be just sort of media talking wrong to somebody who then reported it inaccurately, the whole telephone game. If it's true, again, that's why I say you got to look at it from two ways. And I don't necessarily, even if it did happen, look at it that it was a bad thing. I mean, you have to imagine that there are internal discussions that are very heated because of the way the offensive rhythm is going, and you expect that they work that sort of heat into a positive solution, right? So let's talk about the big picture. NFC North now. Broski's here, so let's get involved. 3 teams now in the NFC North with 5 wins. Green Bay at 5-2-1. is still in first place, even after that loss to the Panthers. Detroit at 5-3, tied with Chicago at 5-3. Obviously, with Detroit holding the current tiebreaker, but they will play at the end of the season as well. And then Minnesota, with the victory over the Lions, moves to 4-4. So they then creep up just a little bit more into that mix. As much as I think a lot of people thought, and I would have told you, everything was going to come down to the Green Bay game on Thanksgiving. Now, with the way things are shaping out, it could mean that those 2 games at the end of the year, Minnesota and then Chicago, could mean everything for the NFC North. I mean, this Bears team, I think, they're... And I hate to say this, I'm going to toot my own horn here, but I'm calling it. I said this, broski. I think we might have had these conversations. I think the Bears were going to start slow. You were going to have this kind of like dissension, and it's going to get weird for a little bit because it's new coach working with a young quarterback. Chicago's always got shifting pieces. It was always, if they didn't just come out and win, it was always going to be, oh, God, what is this? The Ben Johnson working. But now they're stacking wins on top of wins. Things are starting to come together. So I think now the Bears round into shape. Can they continue the momentum? Can they stay healthy? Millicent says, a friend who was sitting next to the tunnel heard Goff, Campbell, and Fraley yelling before the start of the second half. So Goff, Campbell, and Fraley, with Morton not involved with that report there. So that could be where the idea of that report's coming from. I mean, it would make a little bit of sense. And again, I'm not going to speculate. That may or may not have happened, Millicent, and I trust your word. Dan Campbell came out after the game in his press conference and said the protection wasn't good enough, and the scheme of that protection wasn't good enough. So that could have been the conversation there. Goff's getting hit all day. Fraley is having injury problem and protection problems with his offensive line. That makes a lot of sense. Goff allegedly had words with Morton in the locker room post-game. Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I had heard too. It was after the game, so that makes a little sense. Trim says, got to get back to the basics, ground and pound. I mean, I think that's that, and that was my argument in my most recent short that I posted this morning was the way they fix the run game is simplify this thing. Get back to the nuts and bolts of just running the football, the simple schemes that you can do to work your best player, Jahmyr Gibbs, into getting the ball as much as possible. Because, and Michelle's right, Goff is a composure guy. I don't think he would lose his cool for a non-productive reason, which is why even if those arguments did take place, whether it be in the tunnel or the locker room, I think it will be geared towards a positive direction. And I think, Michelle, you're right. I think getting sacked 5 times, pressured just about every play is different for Jared Goff compared to years past. So it is affecting him more. Absolutely right, Broski. Bears have issues on both sides, but they've got playmakers. And you got a floundering division right now. You don't have anybody as far... I'm talking outside of the Bears. The Packers obviously are not running away with it. And the Lions, we're talking about why they're not running away with it. So the Bears have every opportunity to stay in there, hang in there. And who knows what happens at the end of the season. So let me ask you this in chat, guys. Another question for you. Are the Lions still the favorite to win the NFC North? In your mind, based on where we're at now, 5-3, 27-24 loss to the Vikings off the bye week, are the Lions still the favorites to win the NFC North? We're not even talking NFC now. We're talking the NFC North. Let me know in the chat. Packers, Eagles, Monday Night Football. Okay, yeah, let's get into it. I mean, shoot, why not? Right now, I don't know if you could trust the Packers. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Lions fan. I know we all love to hate on the Packers sometimes, but I just think right now the Packers are unpredictable. As good as they were week 1, compare that to how they looked in week 9 against the Panthers, right? And that offense just goes stagnant at times, even more so than the Lions offense. So to me, I mean, the thing is, it's in Lambeau, but again, I don't know if that scares anybody right now. So I think the Eagles go and get that win. I really do. I think the Eagles are a better football team right now, not by much, than the Packers. I think the Eagles' offensive weapons are more consistent than the Packers are. And I think the Eagles' defense should be able to hold the Packers down. So I would take the Eagles in that matchup. Broski says the Bears have created 19 turnovers in 8 games. I mean, that will keep you in football games, no matter what happens. Creating turnovers. Jody says, I hate to admit it, but Goff probably had a much more symbiotic relationship with Osama Ben Johnson. Don't think I've ever heard that before. Osama Ben Johnson. I think that they had so much time together, and Ben Johnson was so invested and involved for so many years in a row there. And Ben Johnson's sole purpose was to be this kind of mad scientist offensive coordinator. And the fact that Ben Johnson was able to have the offensive line that the Lions had, and I would agree with you, Jody. I think they did have a better relationship, but that doesn't mean that him and John Morton couldn't get there. But we'll see. Heck yes, says Jill. Not right now. No, says Jody. Lions says, Lions always manage to fight back. NFC North is going to be back in a 4th division. Yeah, that's how it's looking right now. Jody, you mean Ben Big Johnson? Oh, boy. Yes, the Lions are still the most complete team. I think I agree with that. I mean, I still think that the Lions might be the best team in the NFC when all's said and done. I think there's a lot of football to be played, and there's a lot of questions yet to be answered, but I think they're still in that realm. So I do believe the Lions still are the class of the NFC North. All right, guys, let's talk about it. The trade deadline. Oh, my God. I got to do it. Trade deadline. We know what happened. It's coming and gone. Lions did not make a flash move. Matter of fact, the only move I actually saw them make was to sign some sort of offensive lineman depth piece, which is fine. That's fine. And they need it now, obviously, with Mahogany going down. Jack Conley, who was with the New England Patriots as an undrafted free agent, didn't make their roster, and the Lions have picked him up for depth. That's the only move they really made on the trade deadline. And what I'm hearing from a lot of people is that this is especially folks that weren't on the Brad Holmes train to begin with, this is Brad Holmes' biggest problem, is that he is not willing or able to pull the trigger on a move that will bring the Lions a Super Bowl. And they will point directly to a trade deadline like this, where the Lions at 5-3, hanging around first in their division, have every opportunity to win the North, to get a quality seed in the playoffs and get to a Super Bowl. They did not make any sort of move to help themselves out. So do you believe, and this is the biggest question, did the Lions make a mistake not adding a player at the deadline? Did the Lions make a mistake by not adding a player at the deadline? Michelle says, I'm old. Teams go through these changes. Last year set us up for a really high expectations. If you thought Holmes was going to go nuts, not his style. He does have kind of that American Psycho look to him. He really does, Ben Johnson. I wouldn't mess with him. He might have an ex. What's up, Adam? How you doing? It says One Pride. So we're talking trade deadline. And again, the question to you guys in chat is, did the Lions make a mistake? Did Brad Holmes make the ultimate mistake by not adding a piece in this trade deadline? And we know that's not the Lions organization structure. That's not the way they've done business over the last several years since Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes took over. They haven't been the type of organization to go out and make big splash moves in the offseason and on the trade deadlines, and it held true again this year. But with the stacking injuries on the offensive line, still needing more defensive line pressure, cornerback injuries, safety injuries, should the Lions and Brad Holmes have made a move? Michelle says, look at the injuries last year. We picked up veteran Z Smith. That was it. No panic. The problem, Michelle, is they didn't make that move this year at all. Not that it had to be Z Smith or even an edge, but they didn't make any move. Broski says, yes, big mistake. BH is a dollar store, Brad. You go all in when you have a window to win it all. That's the argument, Broski, on that side of it. That Super Bowl window, where are we at with that? Is it wide open? Is it shutting? And if it's shutting, should there have been a move? Should there have already been a move? Millicent says, not being in the room to know what calls and conversations were had. No one on the outside truly knows. You are correct. I actually did get reports that they had called on a few players. And I think the Lions do their due diligence in these cases. But I think, again, it goes back to what their true plan is. I think they've already developed a strategy for particular players and how they're going to structure certain deals and negotiate certain deals and what plans are at certain positions. So the argument there is, are they so arrogant or so steadfast in their ways that they're not willing to budge or pull the trigger when something is available in there? Milt says it can only be a mistake if there were a player to be had and Brad didn't take it. Now, we really won't know, right? We don't know that answer. If there was like say, a Trey Hendrickson offer available to them that made sense and they just didn't do it. I don't think that would exist, but we don't know. And Broski's right. The problem is they didn't win a playoff game last season. They fell very short, and that game was a disappointment due to many factors, injuries being one of them. And Millicent's correct. What we are assuming that what we needed was available. And I don't know that there was that one piece that fit the bill as far as the right player at the right price that the Lions are willing to go for. And I don't think that player was out there. I think Eagles picked up the one player that I thought the Lions might be able to go after, and Jalen Phillips. So I think that's where people then lean on the fact, well, the Eagles and Howie Roseman and that organization who's been to multiple Super Bowls, won several Super Bowls in this last era, continue to make that move or make the move that Brad Holmes and the Lions aren't willing to make to get them to that level. And is that the true problem? And that's the question. So Lions stand pat. They didn't add offensive line, a splash. They added depth, but that's not going to help them, fill in a starting role. Obviously, with Christian Mahogany out, they got to make some changes. And they're just betting on their internal improvement in those returning players. That's what they're betting on. Can Coyote Owasika just fill in at left guard and have this thing change pace for what we saw against the Vikings? Jody again with a super chat. Wow, you're on fire today. Jody, I appreciate you. Third super chat of the night. Thank you. Another $10 dono. Cannot say thank you enough. She says, I got to super chat this one more time. Yes, Brad heard us. And he put Goff in harm's way. Our playoff window is likely closed. Forget about any possible Super Bowl. I'll be happy to be proven wrong. Jody, I hope that on February 8th or whatever it is, we're having the most glorious discussion we could possibly have. I think a lot of us here in chat would say the same thing, but I don't think you're wrong. I wanted the Lions to make a move this last offseason. I wanted the Lions to make the move the last offseason to add help for Hutch. It was always about adding additional defensive line help. And I don't think they've done enough. Now, I don't think outside of what I said in Jalen Phillips, and maybe that wasn't available to them, and even with Jalen Phillips, that's not a splash move, but it would have been maybe a decent move, and it didn't happen. I wouldn't sit here and say that the window is closed, but I would say that they're not doing enough in my mind to keep that window from shutting. And it's very slowly shutting. That's just my analogy. It's my way of looking at it. I'm not jumping ship. I'm not a Brad Holmes detractor. I think he's done a fantastic job of building this organization, and the strategy of drafting, developing, rewarding is working. Again, we're living through the best era of Lions football, so I try to go back to that. But Jody, I am with you. I'm with you. And I appreciate you more than anything. Thank you for getting involved in the chat. And thank you for your donations. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Honestly. Everybody give it up for Jody. She's been with us all night tonight. Trim humbly disagrees. Brad Holmes has signed all of our best talent for many years. We have a great core. They do. They do. How long will a great core keep you hooked, Trim? And that's an honest question. And I have to ask myself that too, because it might keep me hooked forever. How long will you hang on without a Super Bowl? Jill says, we will just have to work harder. The window is never totally closed. That's a glass half full, and I love that, Jill. I appreciate you for saying that, because you're right. And again, we're talking about, in my opinion, the best coaching staff the Lions have ever had, as far as a group of coaches and their ability to get these players to rally around a cause and grit and the city. I think they'll be able to get out of this. Again, if we talked about at the beginning, I don't think this is necessarily panic mode. I think there's things that need to be fixed right away. Hopefully these heated conversations are the Lions understanding where they're at and where they need to be. And they know that Sunday wasn't good enough. They know that a performance against the Vikings and the way their offense looked in special teams and how sloppy they were in penalties and third downs, they know that has to be better. And so I think that's why you hear those reports and these things. Jody, I know you do. I know you're a fan. I do. And I respect the way you feel. I really do. So let's look ahead. We know Lions Commanders next week. Lions go to Washington. At the beginning of the season, I would have said this is one of the premier matchups, but I think because Jaden Daniels will not be involved, the Washington Commanders have sort of struggled this season. It doesn't have that pizzazz that you thought it would heading into the year, but in week 10, it will mean everything, especially for the Lions. Coming off of this loss to Minnesota, they're going to have to prove they can get up off the ground, collect themselves, revamp this offensive line, and get it to the point where they can still go out and win football games. Kind of manage the middle of the season the best way they can to make sure that they have an opportunity at the division as we get towards the end of the year. So this road game is, I don't want to say a must win because it isn't. There's plenty of football to be played, but the Lions cannot stack losses when you have games against the Eagles. You have your big games on Thanksgiving, the holidays, everything coming up, and that's ahead of you. And you still can control your fate as long as you're able to put a victory together here against Washington. Getting their run game going early, keeping Goff clean, those things they should be focusing on. That rhythm within the offense is really what needs to happen. So let me ask you guys in chat, what do you need to see from the Lions against the Commanders in week 10 to feel confident again? What would give you that confidence back? If you were a level 4, 5, whatever you had said to me earlier, what would you need to see from Detroit against Washington on the road to give you your confidence back, to make you feel warm and fuzzy? What's up, Lean? How you doing? Lean says we need to convert those third downs. We have too many weapons not to convert. I agree. We talked about a little earlier, Lean, the inadequacies of the Lions on third down, especially third and longs. They just cannot get it done. They have to fix that. That efficiency has got to come back. My suggestion and my thought is if they can clean up this rushing attack, get better on first and second downs, it will limit, first of all, the amount of third downs you have to run, but number two, the down and distance. Trim says, I'm still excited for this team and how explosive and talented players we have. I just want better play calling. We need to have it. Got to have it. John Morton's got to prove something to everybody. What's up, Robert? He says, do you think the offense looks any different under Ben Johnson given the current state of the roster? I don't, honestly. Do you think the offense looks any different under Ben Johnson given the current state of the roster? Well, I do think the offense looks different right now with Morton compared to Ben Johnson. I mean, and factoring in the injuries, I mean, if you think about it, if Ben Johnson had the current offensive line, it also may look different. But I think Ben Johnson might be better at than John Morton, at least with the Lions' talent, was the ability to use those pieces in a way that confused the defense, using pre-snap motions to confuse the defense and lean them one direction and fade the other way. As much as we might have beat up Ben Johnson for these creative and crazy play calls, he was confident to use those in big moments that would flip games. And I don't know that John Morton has that confidence. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a hook and ladder or a flea flicker, but it just like the ability to throw the ball or the willingness to throw the ball down the field on a first down play. You know what I mean? Simple things like that. That's where I think Ben Johnson might have had a leg up with the Lions roster. Brosik says, that's the thing. The goal is to retain every player you drafted. It's to win a Super Bowl. Go all in while most of the players you drafted are still on rookie deals. You can't keep them all. Mark, what's up, buddy? Says you have to get to a Super Bowl before it's a Super Bowl window. Interesting. That's an argument. Lions have never been to a Super Bowl. So it's, you know, for Lions fans, it's like we don't really know what Super Bowl winning teams look like. We're still trying to get there. Robert says, finding a way to keep Goff out of pass protection and converting third downs. Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing offensively. Third down conversions. Again, I still think that goes back to the rushing attack, the bare bones of it. Mark says, stop saying that, please. Not sure what you mean, buddy. Lions need to establish the run and cause some turnovers. Yeah, I mean, they haven't been able to cause turnovers like they seemed to early on in the season. And again, when you're struggling offensively, being able to flip the field yourself obviously is key. So, Broski, you're right. Let's find out. Millicent says, is Luvu out for Sunday's game? I think we'll have to probably get a little closer to game day to find out what the true designation is. The one-game suspension for Week 10 has been overturned upon appeal. He is now eligible to play against the Lions. He was suspended without pay on Monday for a hip drop tackle during that Week 9 performance against Seattle, but it looks like it was overturned. So unless there's an injury, Millicent, that I wasn't aware of, it looks like he is eligible to play. That will help them. Jill also supports the need to cause a few more turnovers and then do something with them. That's the other thing, Jill. You're exactly right. That's a great point. Thank you for saying it. Even when the Lions have been able to get turnovers, offensively, they've struggled to convert those into true points. So there's multiple layers to that. Trim says, I want the run game reestablished, but it might not happen with that banged up offensive line. I mean, look, that's the biggest thing. Interior of that offensive line. What are they going to do to shuffle without Mahogany? How many... We lost 3 Pro Bowl offensive linemen in a year. Yeah, there aren't many teams that have done that and then recovered. That's for sure. What's up, McQueen? How we doing, buddy? So that's where we're at. What can the Lions do in Washington to give you that confidence back? Let me know in the chat. And now we'll start to wrap up our live. Again, guys, I appreciate you so much for being involved in the chat. Thank you for coming along for another Johnny Gaz Live. Let's end it with this. The Lions are still a great team. And this loss against the Vikings doesn't make or break this season. It creates questions. More questions that we want to have answers for at Week 10 of this 2025-26 NFL season. But I don't think these are things that were unexpected. If we go back and remember what we talked about in the preseason and the questions that would make sense that would pop up as the Lions navigated this tough schedule. They're still at 5-3. They still control their own destiny. They still have Dan Campbell at the helm and the ability to rally around him, the coaching staff, the organization, and the idea of them striving towards their first Super Bowl. And I think that will provide the motivation to get them over this hump. That heat that you're hearing between the quarterback and the coaching staff, whether it be at halftime or after the game or in the locker room, again, I lean towards that being a positive. They know what needs to be fixed. They know it's not going well. And I think that frustration means that they want this fixed sooner than later. And I expect that to be the case. Robert says he loves the live. Thank you, buddy. Yeah, he won his appeal, Millicent. But I think we still have fixable issues for the Lions. We talked about the running game, the rhythm of the offense, reestablishing on first and second down, and being able to convert third downs. I mean, this Week 10 now becomes sort of a tone setter for the rest of the season. You know, either Detroit bounces back and we're having a much different discussion next Tuesday, or the slide and everything we talked about becomes true reality. I think we'll know a lot about this Lions team after this Washington Commanders game, and I can't wait to talk about it with you guys next week. Again, if you haven't already, guys, subscribe to the channel, whether that be through Facebook at Johnny Gaz Sports or on YouTube. Again, the price of $0.00 just to hit subscribe or follow. And I have everyday, concise, reliable Detroit Lions content. There's membership options and a join option on both of those social media avenues, YouTube, Facebook, where I do highlight reactions, a ton of other fun videos. But simply putting a like, putting a comment on these videos, guys, it's the best free way to help out the channel, and I appreciate it so much. If you haven't already, slap that like button. Let's get this live out there. Let's get our friends and family involved on future lives. Tell everybody that you know about Johnny Gaz Sports and how much fun we have talking about Detroit Lions, our favorite candies. Jill says, we will prevail. Go Lions. Running out of power on iPads. See you later, Jill. Have a fantastic night. I appreciate you, Lean. Peace out. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for rocking with me. Comment your biggest takeaway from tonight's discussion before you go. Trim says, do you know what happens to people who watch Johnny Gaz Sports and don't hit the like and subscribe button? Do you? I don't know what they want to know. No, I appreciate you. Thank you, Millicent. But guys, stay tapped in. Stay involved. Do something good for somebody around you, as Dan Thornton for Lion Talks Live always says. But more than anything else, I say this on the end of every video, and I truly mean it, especially with you guys. Take care of yourself and your mental health. It is so important. It is more important than anything. And I want to make sure that you guys come back and see me on future videos. So that's number one. Have a fantastic rest of your week. I'll have the Lions preview for the Washington Commanders game coming out Friday with a bunch of fun shorts leading up into it. So be on the lookout for that. But I appreciate you guys. Have a fantastic rest of your Tuesday night. I will see you very soon. Go Lions.